see some CLAS chairs hanging out in the back. Please find a seat. I like to stand too, so standing's good. Can y'all hear me okay before we get the live stream going? You good? Yes? Well, good morning, CLAS. Well, I wanted to start this morning by thanking you all for being here. I believe that our college is a community and that we make and remake this community in ritual acts where we come together to support one another. And that's what we're doing today. We are a vibrant group of students, staff, faculty, and alumni, and we have amazing research, teaching, and service to share with all of you. I'm Lisa Karanen, I am your host, and I'm delighted to present our first ever CLAS MixTape, which is a compilation of CLAS's greatest hits. Now, it's no secret that our world is facing challenges. The word unprecedented is overused, and yet we are facing challenges that are arguably unprecedented. I don't need to tell you about that. You read the news every day, and you are aware of a rapidly rising temperatures in the world, and of natural disasters that seem to be multiplying, and other catastrophes that are of human making. But it's not all gloom and doom, because we in CLAS believe that the liberal arts and sciences teach us the knowledge and skills to confront these challenges head on. And so here today, we're to seek a sample of this work that is looking at some of society's most pressing challenges. And I couldn't be prouder of our students, our alumni, and our faculty who are presenting today. And I also want to give a shout out to our staff. We've got Aman, we've got Ellie, we've got Karen Fennell somewhere, we have Michelle, and every time I say yes to a project, it creates more work for Michelle. But she was flanked by Alibi August, who has just joined our department. And I want to thank the mixtape team and our dean, Pamela Jansma, because it's a cliche. I don't like the cliche, but it's true, as all cliches are, that it takes a village. And as I see your smiling faces, my spirits are buoyed because I know we have such wonderful human beings in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Now, our theme today is an important one for society. It's an important one for our campus. Maybe you've heard there's a lot of students here today, and thanks to faculty for bringing your classes. But we know that CLAS, not CLAS Campus, has set an ambitious goal of being one of the nation's first, if not the first, quote, equity-serving institution. But long before we had that goal, the faculty, staff, and students in CLAS have valued diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And that's what we strive to do. And we've done that from when we've recognized the displacement that happened on our very campus that allows us to be who we are and where we are today. So we're gonna go back today about 3.6 million years ago to a field in Lake Tolly. And then we're going to bounce forward and we're going to look at bison DNA. We're going to look at undocumented students and what we can do as a campus to help them out. We are also going to hear about how geneaology can connect us with our students and our campus and our community. And last but not least, because the humanities are so important, we're going to have a little poetry. And why do I say that the humanities, yay, thank you. Why do I say that the humanities are so important? That's because in times of crisis, that's where we turn. And my clearest example of this is the pandemic. We needed the science to make vaccines, oh yes. We needed ethical reasoning to figure out how to justly distribute those vaccines. And yet, every night, raise your hand, who watched pandemic media, those outbreak stories, or read literature, or consumed some other form of human literary and artistic expression to make sense of the senseless, right? You're nodding. You didn't raise your hands for me, but you're nodding, yes? All right, so we've got some poetry today. So I've said enough, and I'm about to turn things over to a wonderful alum who closed out convocation. Her name is Asia Fox. How many of you know Asia? Yes, all right. Asia was part of our English department and minored in psychology and now has the distinction of being, here's why the humanities matter, the poet laureate of Aurora. And she's here to start us out with her poem, How to Be the Water Cycle. Asia, take it away.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me. It's really awesome to be back on this campus, and I brought my firstborn and got a picture in front of the Tivoli, so happy about that. All right, so how to be the water cycle. These bodies rock, pebble the ground in twos, threes, stars tilting base, completely over. Say, we are over the turbulent thrum of the washing machine when the porch light goes dark. Ride the flow until boats split, like your hair on Sunday morning, like your legs by Sunday night. This is your grandmother's dance, her loose hips. Are these her sons, waterlogged in your bed, their milk teeth neighboring blood blisters? Know the shadow of your brother below the boardwalk. Know yourself as rock and flow and river and bed. Find yourself there, stiff in the drain, reeking of peaches and Louisiana spice, because that's the only way to haunt someone. Once you seek a new name, look under someone else's waterfalling. You'll find a wholly soaked black boy with another black boy tossing his net into the water. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asia Fox, everybody. Next, I have the great privilege of introducing to you someone who is a longtime member of our campus, and I just got to know him a couple of weeks ago, briefly on Zoom, but I can't say enough good things, and I'm so glad that Sarah Hagelin, his interim chair, recommended him to be one of our speakers today. And I wish that I had had the opportunity to take a class with senior instructor Dennis Green. Let me tell you, woo, yeah, epic studies, Dennis. Dennis brings more than 50 years of military and civilian experience studying American ethnic history. And our theme today is out of the classroom. Dennis is taking his students out of the classroom and then making connections back to this campus. So everybody give me a warm round of applause for the fabulous Dennis Green.
Thank you. How's everyone doing?
Woo!
Oh boy. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
You know, I love family. Okay. I'm big on family. Some of my students call me Professor Family, not because I've been married a million years, but because I have this almost obsession with the idea of connectivity to family, especially with regards to genealogy. And people say, what is genealogy? Basically, that's the study of the descent of various families. And basically, years ago, my wife and I were concerned about the history for our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to come. And we set off on this journey to document the history of our family. You see, this was not a chore, this was not an irritant, because I had already grown up around grandparents and parents who made sure that they always kept connections to community, making sure they would journey back and forth. So we set out on this journey, and you have to understand, we were doing a lot of driving. We set out to deal with Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas. And I can remember this one Thursday, I was teaching 9 classes in 2 days. And in 1 day, I taught 6 classes from 9:30 in the morning to 8:15 at night. And my wife and I set out at midnight, heading for Arkansas. You know, and it was exciting. It was exciting seeing what was going to happen. And we didn't know where this was going to take us. But we knew that it was going to be exciting. But then the narrative changed, because the more that we searched and visited these depositories, hospitals, jails, doctors' offices, and so forth, individuals started to get real cold towards us. And one night, my wife said when we were in the hotel, she said, "Have you noticed it seems like these individuals are lying to us?" And I said, "Well, you know what those old folks say, that the closer you get to truth, the more the pressure is going to come towards you. So I think we're doing okay." But you know, when people started drawing guns on us and telling us in different areas, "No, your kind is not welcome here in this town," I questioned my own sanity. And then my friends began to say, "What in the world are you doing? All you have to do is go to Ancestry.com and you can get everything that you want." But see, we didn't get mad at them because we understood that they didn't understand the limitations of various websites such as Ancestry when it came to African American genealogy. We understood that, so we didn't get mad. But we had no idea what was in store for us. And we kept searching. You know, and I don't know how many of you have this dislike for snakes the way that I do. I don't like snakes. But something was happening across the nation, and it still is happening, in that old generation that was so obsessed with taking care of graves and visiting graves, they're getting old and passing away. And a lot of our cemeteries are becoming in very, very bad shape. And so when my wife and I would get to certain cemeteries, indeed, when they were underwater, I'd put on my snake boots. They said, "What are snake boots? What is that?" These are boots that are very heavily lined to keep you protected from getting bit. Because many times when we go into the water and we have to pick up the graves one at a time, scrub them with a brush to see if the lettering was still there. But you see, when I put my snake boots on, then I'd go into my snake dance into the water. Boom, 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 boom. That was the signal to the snakes, "Here I come," so that they could leave me alone. And you know, I have to be truthful with you. The first time I had to do that, it didn't turn out too well. I think I splashed maybe 2 or 3 times at the most, and 2 snakes came up out of the water, and I became an instant track star, and I was gone. No more research for that day. There were some graves we went to, indeed, we uncovered 200 graves, took pictures, because we were on this mission. And we had no way of knowing that the narrative, this whole script was about to change, because one day we came back to Denver, talked to my father-in-law, and he said, "Well, when I was a young man, not even 10 years old," he said, "some white individuals came to my house, took my father in a wagon, and we never seen him again." And my wife and I looked at each other, and I'll never forget that look in my wife's face when she looked at her father. She said, "Daddy, I'll find out what happened to your dad. I promise that." That was the longest trip back down south that night, because my mind kept saying, "What happened to his dad? He never seen him again, and nobody knows the story." Searching, frustrated, tired. But now we have a new passion. Instead of just for our children, trying to find this for the dad. Oh God. Now it's really getting ready to flip. I don't know how many of you in here have heard of the medical experiment, the Tuskegee syphilis study. It went from 1932 to 1972, in which they deliberately withheld treatment from black men because they wanted to study the effects of untreated syphilis. Wow. searching, searching, searching everywhere we went. People were lying. No, we don't have any record of an individual in here. I said, well, what is this little number we have on this grave? So then we had to go back to Denver, tell my father-in-law, your father didn't abandon you. He was taken from one state to another to be used in the Tuskegee syphilis study. Oh, I'll never forget that scream of his. But you see, I tell my classes all the time, I operate my classes like their family, and I tell them all, you're my grandchildren. Straighten up. Straighten up. And I tell them about how small the world is and that we're connected. And you see, I teach a class called the African American Family, and I make everybody do a family tree. I don't care what you look like. My wife, who's a professional genealogist, she helps walk them through that. And do you know, over the course of several years, I've had a couple students found out they were related to me. See, all the time I tell them, not only is this a family, CLAS is a family. And that goes to show how small things are. And then I make sure they understand how important their family is. Because we used to get tired of people saying, oh, well, your family did this and did that, and my family didn't. And I say, the only reason you say that is because no one has ever told you about the significance of your family. CLS is strong. I've been on this campus a long time. And I appreciate all of you giving me the time to talk about that small snippet of what happened in our family. If you don't become the genealogist, who will? You must keep that in mind. Thank you.
And Dennis is a powerful storyteller, and when we got together for our meeting to organize this, we got into Paris and graves and guns and the whole thing. So talk to Dennis afterwards, because he's got fantastic stories about what he and his students have done together. So another colleague that I've had the pleasure of getting to know, thanks to Keith Guzik and sociology, is Edelina Burciaga. Edelina brings a really powerful combination of legal training and sociology together in her work to think about how we can better support undocumented students. And she's got a fantastic presentation, so I'm just gonna turn things over to the fabulous Edelina Burciaga.
Hi everyone, I am going to try timing myself. Hi everyone, my name is Edelina Burciaga and I am excited to be here with all of you today. I want to start by sharing a story. I've been doing research with undocumented young people for over 15 years, and I want to share with you the story of one of the very first young people I had the chance to interview. His name is Samuel, not his real name. And I interviewed him. He was probably my third participant for my second year paper in graduate school. So we were both actually younger then. We both probably had less gray hair than we do now. But our interview covered a lot of topics. It covered his migration journey to the United States, why his family migrated, his experiences growing up without papers in the United States, and his experience navigating college as an undocumented immigrant. The conversation naturally flowed to sort of what he saw for his future, and he got quiet for a moment and he looked at me and he said, "Have you heard of that book, Oh, the Places You'll Go?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I have. I feel like it's a gift that I see, a book that I see around at graduation time, as it captures the story of an unnamed protagonist as he sets out on a journey of adventure and hope and anticipation." But what resonated with Samuel was the idea of the waiting place. And he told me, and he said, "I feel like I'm in the waiting place, like I'm waiting for snow to snow, waiting for time to pass. How do you wait for time to pass?" As an undocumented young person, his future was uncertain to him. This was before DACA, And I'll share with you that I've kept in touch with Samuel over the years. He graduated from college. With DACA, he was able to get a job in nonprofit work, working with youth of color. He found a partner. They've had 2 children. He had his child just a couple years after I did, so I was able to pass along some stuff. I think he's lived a life that he couldn't imagine that time when we were doing the interview. A lot of this is because of the implementation of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program. DACA came as a result of mobilization by undocumented youth activists. There was an intense summer in 2010 where undocumented youth activists participated in acts of civil disobedience, including sit-ins and hunger strikes, shutting down major intersections. So it was not just from the benevolence of the Obama administration, but direct action by undocumented youth activists. It provides a 2-year work permit for folks and protection for deportation. Here in Colorado, there are about 14,500 DACA recipients. Now, in 2017, my slide is going to change over, I know, because I timed it. In 2017, because of the way that the DACA program was introduced, following through on a campaign promise, then President Donald Trump ended the DACA program. I remember this day clearly. It was September 5th, 2017. Classes were already in session. I think I was already headed to campus. I think once the new president was inaugurated, a lot of undocumented folks awaited, undocumented young people in particular, were waiting for this announcement. I was headed to campus, and I had only been in Denver for a couple years, but sensed that the campus was a meeting place for folks. And that's precisely what happened that morning. DACA recipients, allies, family members, educators left metro area high schools and marched here to the Auraria Higher Education Center for a rally in support of undocumented young people, in support of DACA, in support of their families. And there were speakers, emotions were high. There were speakers in support of DACA. There were DACA recipients sharing the value of DACA to them. And one of the last speakers was a young woman named Carla. And I was really struck by her tone. She shared, when my family came here, they crossed so many times to give me the education I have now. I'm still an immigrant. I'm still undocumented. And she got emotional. And she said, I will not stand down just because they tell me. So to see Carla years after, 7 years after the height of the undocumented youth movement, having embraced one of the main messages of the movement, undocumented, unafraid, unapologetic, and unashamed. That rescission of the DACA program has led to an ongoing legal battle. I kind of shifted this talk, I'll be honest, last night, because there was a decision in the DACA case, the Fifth Circuit. The ongoing legal battle peaked in 2020 with the Supreme Court deciding that the way the Trump administration ended the program was illegal, but the Supreme Court did not decide on the legality of the DACA program. The case was returned to the Fifth Circuit. I could really bore you with the nuances of this of the legal battle, but what I really want to underscore is that there is a question that remains about whether or not DACA was implemented legally, and that is the question that is on the table. And while I joke about the nuances of the legal argument being boring, they're not. They're incredibly exciting. What I want to emphasize is that the outcome is really important. Whether or not the DACA program is found legal or not will have significant impacts for undocumented young people on our campus, in the city, in our state, and in this country. And the reality is that this ongoing legal battle has created cohorts of undocumented immigrant young adults. There is a group of young people that I got to know in the earliest stages of my graduate career who were never eligible for DACA, mostly because they were over the age of 35 when the program was announced. There's a group of young people, the nearly 600,000 that currently have DACA, who are managing and navigating daily life and enjoying the benefits that DACA has gave them, but are living with an almost constant fear that the program will be canceled. And there is a new group that hasn't been allowed to apply or whose applications have been on hold because of the ending of the program. And so what I want to leave you with, I think, are two things. One, I hope, is the power and the resilience, because they've had to be, of DACA recipients, undocumented young people, and their families. I want to emphasize that all of the undocumented young people I have gotten to know refer to their parents as the original dreamers. We can acknowledge and be grateful for what DACA has done for DACA recipients, while also recognizing that it is not enough. We need a pathway to citizenship. And so I tried to think about what can we, as folks on a campus with undocumented students and DACA recipients, what can we be doing? I think that we can be thinking about institutional policies beyond DACA. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about particularly experiential learning activities like internships, research assistantships, student employment. How do we make sure that all students can fully participate in the opportunities that we offer? We can educate ourselves. There's 2 opportunities this semester through our Documented Student Support Services office to attend an Ally training in September. In November, there's an Indocu Resource Day. And I think that if I could, push all of us that we all have access to our lawmakers. We need to really be advocating for a pathway to citizenship for all undocumented immigrants. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Edelina. And we're going to just keep the amazing stories and research and work coming today. And I have to say that I'm continually in awe of what our students accomplish. And thanks to Mike Green, I got a tip about someone in integrative biology. I'm hoping the automatic timing's not going, but we'll work with that, Faye. So we have a student from our master's program in integrative biology who also got a certificate in the environmental stewardship of indigenous lands. And what is fascinating about her work is A, its collaborative nature, but then B, using science to solve some mysteries in ways that support collaborations with indigenous councils and getting bison back. And so she'll tell you a lot more about it, but let's hear it for Fayelynn Scheideman from Integrative Biology.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Faye, and I'm going to be talking about the Denver Mountain Park's bison herds. They're reuniting with indigenous communities and a genetic mystery that I am trying to solve. So before the 1800s, there were 15 to 16 million bison in North America. These bison were thundering in herds of thousands of individuals across the Great Plains and up into the Rocky Mountains. These bison were keystone species, meaning that they were absolutely crucial to the functioning of the Great Plains ecosystems. And they were also an important resource in kin with the indigenous peoples, specifically the Plains tribes of the United States. Bison served as food, they were shelter, and they were also an incredibly important relationship that these tribes had with these animals. During the 1800s, the United States Army began the process of trying to remove indigenous peoples from their lands. This was a severe conflict that ended in a lot of indigenous peoples being either killed or forcibly removed. And one of the things that ended up being the pinnacle of this conflict was the bison themselves. Bison were a source of resiliency for these tribes because of how crucial of a resource they were. So this conflict ended in the United States Army, as well as other private individuals, almost completely eradicating the bison. We went from about 16 million individuals in North America to less than 1,000. These groups were incredibly spread out, and either in extreme remote wilderness areas, such as Yellowstone National Park, or they had been taken onto private lands. Here I have a picture of Yellowstone bison from pre-1900, showing just how few individuals were left. Fortunately, in the late 1800s, there were some conservation efforts that got started. There were actually a lot of tribal individuals who took bison onto their reservation lands and started to grow the populations. There were also private individuals, such as William Hornaday and Charles Goodnight, who took bison onto their private ranches. One consequence of this privatization of bison herds is that there was a lot of crossing between bison and domestic cattle, which led to a high level of cattle genes being present in the bison genome. The next slide I'm going to show you is a video that I took this year in Genesee, Colorado, and it's of bison being put into a trailer to go to the Ute tribe of Oklahoma, who is not a federally recognized tribe, and they have not been able to have bison. They have not witnessed bison since the first eradication happened in the 1800s. Hopefully. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. That incredible moment was the culmination of over 100 years of bison conservation work, reparations work, and collaboration between indigenous groups, private organizations, and government organizations. In 1890, bison were given to the Denver Zoo, females from Yellowstone National Park and males from the National Bison Range. These bison were then given to Denver Mountain Parks in 1914, who started their herd in Genesee, Colorado, which is that incredible charismatic herd that we see whenever we drive up I-70 into the mountains. These bison, access from these bison were then taken to form the Daniels Park herd in the 1930s. From the beginning, the main focus with these herds was to just grow as many of them as possible, but unfortunately that ended in a very cattle-like management strategy, where bison who were accessed were usually auctioned off to private ranchers to go into the meat industry. But in the last few years, Denver Mountain Parks have really been prioritizing treating these animals as wildlife, and then focusing on their conservation. And this ended up with this incredible collaboration that started around 2020, where Denver Mountain Parks and the Intertribal Buffalo Council started working together to reunite these excess yearlings with tribally owned herds. As an environmental stewardship of indigenous lands intern, I got to intern with Denver Mountain Parks. I was trained as a liaison, and I was able to work between Denver Mountain Parks and the Denver American Indian Commission to make sure that the indigenous communities in Colorado are being heard and are an active member of the management and conservation of these groups, as well as where these bison are going. These photos are from last year's transfer, and what happens is all of the yearlings are rounded up, taken up to Genesee, and then there is a ceremony where the indigenous communities in Colorado come to have talks and talk about the significance of these bison and the healing and the reparations, and then to also do ceremonies for healing and to send these bison off to their families. Now that I finished my internship a couple years ago, and now that I'm in grad school, I am now trying to bring science into this conversation to see how I can help ensure the health and longevity of these bison as they're being taken to these tribally owned herds. As I mentioned, these bison were from Yellowstone National Park, supposedly. And so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm doing genetic testing with these bison to make sure that that ancestry is true. And if it is true that these bison were taken in 1890, that means that they were taken before an introduction event of 3 bulls with heavy cattle genes in them into the Yellowstone herd in 1903. Which means that we actually could have one of the last pure matrilineal lines of Yellowstone bison. Overall, I'm also looking for genetic variation, making sure there's no inbreeding, and just understanding how these bison are going to impact these herds that they're either starting from scratch or that they're being reintroduced to. My hope is that this will just help in this global reintroduction effort and also just help in bringing these bison back home to these indigenous groups to start that relationship again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Faye. That was very powerful. And I want to give a shout out to Faye's mom, who is with us today. We love to have an extended CLAS community. So you're part of the CLAS family now. Yes, absolutely. So our next speaker has been jet setting. He just recently landed from Italy. He's a very busy man. You might have seen him in some documentaries from time to time, and certainly in the media. Professor of Anthropology, Dr. Charles Musiba, joins us today to talk about his more than 20 years of research at the Laetoli site in Tanzania. And he's going to talk to us about a journey that starts with bipedalism and ends with cultural preservation. So I could say so many great things about his Carnegie Diaspora Fellowship and other very prestigious appointments that he has, but to many of us, he needs no introduction. So let's have a hand for the fabulous Dr. Charles Musiba.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so just landed last night, actually. Being delayed by Delta for about 9 hours in Atlanta and got in Denver about 2 in the morning. I'm still jet lagged, but I couldn't resist coming out here. So what do? I study human origins. I'm a student of human origins. I'm interested in knowing who are we? Where do we come from? How did we get here? But most important, the relationship between environment and our ancestors. So we can take you back on a journey 3.5 to 3.6 million years ago to one place in East Africa known as Laetoli, which is actually northern Tanzania. And that's the place where, if I'm not gardening in the summer in my backyard, I'm actually camping out, sleeping on the ground for 6 weeks. And people always ask, why do you do that for? I said, because I'm curious. We had speakers talk about migration. It's actually in our DNA. People never think about that. We've been migrating since actually way back in time. And interesting enough, almost 150,000 years ago, we almost became extinct. Thanks to migration, we survived. So it's interesting to think about it, but I'm always interested in studying bipedalism. Why did we become bipedal? So I take you to a site, and most of the things I do is actually spending time playing in dirt, volcanic ash, dated about 3.6 million years ago. And this past summer, we actually discovered another trail of early ancestors of ours, footprints, which we're now starting to figure out that actually more than one species of our ancestors, Australopithecus afarensis, basically roamed the East African savanna landscape. There were actually more than one species, so that's really exciting. And we had some work which was published in Nature with actually 4 of our graduate students from CLS. Can you imagine CLS graduate students getting Nature publication? So to me, that's really important. But most important is just getting those students in a field in which we can actually spend some time working with our colleagues, our Tanzanian colleagues, and also working with people from other places. We have people coming from Ohio State, Dartmouth College, which we actually sort of work with. And I'm thinking we need more CLS students, especially graduate students, to do a little bit more field work, because with that, That's the way you actually end up getting more experiences and actually brag out when you go looking for jobs and say, hey, I'm a global citizen. I've been working in Africa, I've been working in Asia, I've been working in the United States. So that's the way to go. But just to recap on things, anthropology has been actually a study which has been also associated with a little bit structural violence. We were part early on into race studies, and if you ever heard very recently, the University of Pennsylvania Museum has some human remains in which they were using for science illegally. So one of the other things which I've been doing, and my trip to Italy was actually sponsored by Werner Grant Foundation for Anthropological Research. And that was actually to try to figure out museums such as the Smithsonian museums in Europe, have actually human remains, and some of them were actually acquired in very dubious ways. Some of these human remains are actually used to teach in medical schools, and if you know, very recently, German quietly returned about 6,000 individual skeletons of Africans, victims of the Herero War in Namibia. And that was actually the very first genocide we can actually talk about. We don't hear much about these things. So I'm working with a lot of my colleagues in anthropology to try to turn around anthropology to become much more inclusive and also start to think about repatriation. So last week, we started looking at fossil remains which are actually all over the world. There are a number of those remains coming from a site like Laetoli. And there, we have about 300 fossil hominins remains and other mammals scattered all over, some in the British Natural History Museum, some in the American Museum of Natural History. The Smithsonian has also remains, and a lot of other museums in Norway and Sweden. But imagine if we can actually return those remains to the countries of origins. And not only Tanzania, there is remains from China, Indonesia, we can talk about. So that's part of the other things which I'm trying to do, is actually get ourselves, and CLS, we have to be in the forefront. And we are doing that. And interesting enough, as a member of the board of the US World Heritage, which is actually the International Council for Sites and Monuments, we had a program, and this is called the Emerging International Professionals. And Faye, please, you should apply this summer. We need people like you who are actually doing this kind of work to actually sort of do that, because besides actually having these opportunities, we are also working on monuments of oppression, basically removing them all over the United States. So again, equity, inclusiveness is part of the scene. And I would like to say, let's just roll our sleeves and get this going. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. That was great. I feel like you brought a show and tell object that didn't make it to the podium. Did you? And will you say a moment about that while I pull up a video?
Sure.
Thank you.
Beside Professor David Tresser here, I think a lot of you don't know who this guy is, or this lady is. Who knows this? So in 1925, in South Africa, Raymond Dart and Robert Broom actually discovered what we call Misesplasi, which is Australopithecus africanus, dated about 3.3 million years old. This is the replica, not the original. So please don't quote me on that. And so when I teach human origins, actually I'm teaching human evolution now. This morning we are talking about this individual. So the other story which is very interesting about this is that it was actually discovered in Africa, but did not make it into being accepted, widely accepted as one of our ancestors until late in 1959, when another specimen, if you hold up the...
We've got more than one, actually. He said, "Can I bring a skull?" I said, "Sure."
When another specimen known as Australopithecus boisei was discovered on the 27th of July 1959 by Louis and Mary Leakey at Old Gorge in Tanzania, then that's when indeed Africa became the cradle of humanity. I will stop here now.
Fantastic. Couldn't have planned that if I tried, but I appreciate it. So I said earlier I wanted to give a shout out to staff, and I see so many in this room, and I'm so glad to see our CLAS staff because they're the backbone. We couldn't do any of this without the partnership and collaboration of all of you. So Pam, Sona, Carrie, I see you, Tabitha, there's so many. So staff, stand up for a moment and let's give them a round of applause. Yes, we see you, we appreciate you. Ellie Lewis is right here, and I wanted to thank Ellie, who is behind the scenes live streaming this to YouTube to an untold number of our colleagues who are working from home today, probably more than are in this room, I suspect, based on the RSVPs. And I also wanted to thank our CLAS IT team for all of their help. And then somebody who I see a lot because she works for the CLAS Media Learning Lab. And students, if you don't know this, you can come by and check out equipment. You can check out DSLR cameras. You can check out a higher end camera. You can get light kits. And you can get assistance editing using the Adobe Suite products. So that's in the Student Commons building on the 3rd floor. And I kind of slammed this project on our Media Lab creative assistant and said, hey, can you really quick, like in the next 2 weeks, make me a short for CLAS? And we've been really busy with some other things in our department, but Cassidy did it. And there's a little asterisk. This is not our final cut. And we're gonna replace some of the figures from the School of Education that were part of some B-roll we found with all of you today. So, you know, we've got good footage of our speakers today and all of you in the audience. And we just wanted to show you the draft and get some feedback. So Cassidy, thank you so much. And here is Cassidy's really, I did nothing. Here is Cassidy's video, if I can. I think. There we go.
Arts and sciences provide you with
Nope.
a global perspective.
You can't hear that, can you? And Aman is not here, but Ellie's going to come up for 1 second, and we have our fantastic Dean, Pamela Jansma, on screen, frozen with a facial expression. Oh, here we go. We'll try this again. Yes.
Yeah, what we're gonna have to do.
We're gonna have to do one thing. I'm so sorry. This is me. This is all me. I wanted it to be seamless, and we switched laptops at the last minute.
We're gonna do this one, and then...
Speakers. Do you have another skull, Charles? Perchance.
Got one on his head.
One on his head. And while I'm here, students, raise your hand if you're a student. CLAS students, that's fantastic. Shout out to faculty who brought their students here today. If you need to sign in for someone's class, the person to see is in blue, Michelle Maydal back there. So some of you saw, because your instructors are here too, and they're taking attendance for classes that are meeting right now. But otherwise, please do see Michelle and make sure that we get your attendance record for being here today. And thanks for coming and getting to know our faculty a little bit better. Ellie says we're ready with the video.
Sorry, I'm shy.
Confab.
Got it.
All right.
Liberal arts and sciences provide you a global perspective, which is essential in this fast-changing world that we have.
When you consider how many majors and programs we have in CLAS, everything from how the human biology to how the Aztec Empire operated, we cover it all.
What makes it special here at CU Denver is that liberal arts and sciences is together. A lot of institutions, they're starting to pull that apart, where they have liberal arts and then they may have a science college. This blend of the liberal arts and sciences is really what it's about in our world. It's to have this well-rounded understanding of the physical and the scientific part of what we experience in life, but it also is the humanist aspects of what we need to know as individuals to have better, fuller lives as well as have better careers.
We're a research university, and so we are constantly renovating our knowledge so that we are not simply teachers in the sense that we're conveying received knowledge and passing it on to students. We're teacher scholars in the sense that our research feeds into what we teach, and that ensures that students here are learning all the latest.
We have a large first-generation student population, a lot of transfer students, a very diverse population to give our students an opportunity to explore different ways in which they can experience the world and think about themselves and how that might take an interest and turn it into something where they can be very impactful.
The ICB program consists of University of Colorado, Denver and China Agricultural University. The fact that CLAS is committed to ICB illustrates the dedication that this university has for diversity and for maintaining a diverse student body. CLAS is the heart of CU Denver because we provide the foundational learning experience for every single student on campus.
Woo, Cassidy! Thank you so much, Cassidy. And now we've got all this great coverage. Oop, we don't need it again. All right, great. So I can see that our final poet is ready to go, but I'm going to ask her to hold on because we have a few minutes that we can actually have a conversation with our presenters today, because I think some of you have some questions. And when we did a practice of our talks a few days ago, we discovered incredible connections. There was Dennis out on the tarmac with the outfits that came, the uniforms that they received from one of the Plains indigenous communities a very long time ago. And there were just so many interesting genetic and other connections that we discovered and we're talking about. So we hope those themes will come up. I will circulate with a handheld mic, and we can take about 5-7 minutes of questions before our student poet is going to kick us out of here for today and send us on our way. All right, so I will have our 4 presenters come back up here. Our researchers from CLAS and teachers. And I'll look for hands and come to you with a microphone. So, questions? Who would like? Who will start us off? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, come. Can I?
Yeah. Hi there, I'm Mike Green. I'm a professor and chair of integrated biology. So, doing biology students here especially. Welcome. I have a question. As you've gone through this and listened to this, I wonder what has surprised you, what you found most interesting about the connections among your work. Where did the light bulb go on?
Okay, sure. Yeah, all right.
Make the city go.
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. So I think for me, something that was really exciting was the connection between our work, just in terms of indigenous peoples and also genetics and social history. And then also Dennis had a really incredible story about work that he did while he was in the Marines, where he participated in survival wilderness training using technology and clothing from Plains individuals, which I can actually let you talk about that a little bit more.
I was in special ops and was up in Pine Ridge Indian Reservation up in South Dakota. And basically the natives took us through a ritual and they outfitted us with material from the animals. And I really thought I was going to die. We were out there, standing out there in the elements with the B-52s all night long. And we had nothing on us except what the Plains natives had given us. And that brought a tremendous respect for me with regards to the knowledge that they had. I have never been afraid of the elements since. And I mean, from head to toe, they outfitted us with everything we needed. And we were out there. You've ever been in South Dakota, and you know how that weather is. I was not cold at all. Tremendous respect from that experience.
Anyone else? Charles?
Well, as a scholar and student of human origins, Faye's story was actually interesting to me because I also study paleoecology, basically past environments. So trying to figure out 3.5 million years ago, what type of animals actually sort of lived or roamed the savanna environment. And we have evidence from footprints. We have actually buffaloes, some of them actually extinct. So those were actually before our time. But think about the mass extinction which we as humans have actually caused. It's just amazing. And not thinking about it that actually we are part of an ecosystem which is actually, it's very dynamic unless we actually sort of preserve everything we see around us. And I think that's, to me, that's the biggest connection. And then to your work, migration. I mean, humans been migrating, and starting with Homo erectus about 2 million years ago almost. So we are, it's in our DNA, and when you think about it, these boundaries which we see today, these are actually part of our imagination with colonization and all that. So to think about it again, those are connections which I think we as a CLS, we make that actually we are part of this amazing, and our dean basically he talked about the connections which we have in the world. I mean, we train people who actually are ready to actually go anywhere in the world, and that's the connections which I see. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say the same, that there's a poster done by an artist, I think her name is Fabiana, and it's got a butterfly on it, and it says "Migration is beautiful." And I think that that's something that I see in all of these stories that we've told, is some story of migration, and the way that migration has facilitated connection to other places, and answering questions.
Great, thank you so much. Is there any other brave soul who will come forward and speak into this mic so our audience at home, hello class people, can hear the questions? Who's next? Don't all rush me at once, seriously. Yes. Well, I have one, I suppose, and Faye, I don't think you teach, so.
I do.
You do, oh, even better, wonderful. She teaches right after this. So there's a lot of students in the room, and I wanted each of you to just briefly tell us about what you teach, because I suspect that you've got some people in here who might want to sign up for your classes.
I'll start. So I regularly teach race and ethnicity in the United States, and it fulfills a core requirement, and I'll be teaching it in the spring. And in that class, we talk a lot about racism. We do talk about immigration, cover a lot of things. And I'm also teaching a stacked class, that's what it's called, a stacked class called Race, Culture, and Immigration. And in that class, we look specifically more deeply at the immigrant experience and issues of race and the racialization of immigration policy in the United States. And if you're interested in learning about research, I teach qualitative research methods online. And I don't think that I could have gotten to know the young people that I did get to know as deeply as I have without the use of ethnography, in-depth interview, narrative analysis. So please come take that class with me. I think I do a pretty good job of teaching it. Please come take classes with us in the Department of Sociology.
Oh boy, I teach
A lot.
intro,
Everything, yeah.
intro to ethnic studies, African American history. I teach a class called Culture, Racism, and Alienation, in which I cover about maybe 7 so-called groups of color, as well as about 9 different Anglo-American groups: Italians, Irish, Scandinavians, Jewish. Oh boy, and race and ethnicity in the inner city. My poverty class, I'm a little bit tired today because I was out with the tent people last night to about 2 o'clock this morning, dealing with a number of the young children that were out in the midst of being caught in poverty. So I teach about 7 classes within ethnic studies, and so come on. You know, my flagship class though that I really like is that African American family class, because I get to see individuals for the first time realize the significance of their own families. And I see a big change in them with regards to the academic prowess and everything once they realize that. So I love that class. And I might be in Brazil, I might be in Portugal, I might be in London, I might be in Paris, various places researching family trees, because if my students can't, if they hit a brick wall, and I do a lot of traveling, then I take up the case for them. And I find out exactly what their family tree is about. So come on, ethnic studies need you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm a master's student, so I don't get to teach fun, big classes that are like specifically what I'm doing. But I'm a TA for Molecules to Cells, which is the second semester biology. And I think my version of it's pretty fun. There's a lot of bison involved. I was just telling my students about the new bison reference genome that just got published. And I also have like a little book club that we do where we like go through different science and biology books. So if you need to take like an ancillary science course and you need to do some labs, I would recommend biology. I think it's pretty fun. I think it's a lot funner than chemistry, but I think it'd be a great time. So, and then another thing that I am doing this semester is I am part of the Sloan Foundation grant, which is actually something that we're doing in the integrative biology department. I'm working with Jasmine Vidrio, another graduate student, and Dr. Laurel Hartley in our department, as well as the University of New Mexico and the Association of Public and Land Universities. And we are doing a class series on equitable teaching practices, specifically for graduate student TAs in STEM. So we're focusing on a lot of kind of what we've been talking about, racial prejudices and other things that affect our CLAS student body, and how we as graduate students can really emphasize and make sure that those don't get in the way of the incredible learning opportunities and the idea that every student is so incredible and has everything that they need to succeed. So if you're interested about that, I'd be happy to talk about it. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, I'll be the last one to talk about what I teach. I teach several classes. Let me start with the one which is actually really important for CLAS. That's the Introduction to Biological Anthropology. That's a class which actually fulfills the natural sciences requirement for those of students who are thinking about, should I take biology, should I take chemistry or physics? Then they actually come into our classes. Interestingly enough, they have to learn all of those things which they actually avoided. Because we have to talk about genetics, we have to talk about anatomy, we have to talk about chemistry. So they do. And that's really one of our biggest class in our department, because it's one of the class we take for students. If you have to graduate as an undergrad, you have to have at least taken one of them class. And there are several of those. But then I also teach upper level classes, including electives, like right now I'm teaching human evolution, so we are doing a tour of our species going back about 6 million years ago, talking about our ancestors. I'm also teaching another class, and that one is actually hands-on, because it's lab related. It's human osteology, basically, the human skeletal anatomy. And that's a really good class for those who are thinking, pre-med students who are thinking to go to medical school. Those who are engineers, we never think about human body as part of the biomechanics, in which we can talk about why everything functions the way they are. joints, we talk about joints. And of course, the human body is almost like a bridge. When you think about the vertebral column, I look at it and say, if you actually design a bridge like the human body, then you're in trouble.
Thank you, all of you. And I'm going to ask you and our two poets to come back up for some photos with Cassidy afterwards. But I told you when we started today that we were going to start and end with the humanities because they're so critical to who we are as a species and how we figure out where we are going in a post-human world. And so we have the very special privilege today of hearing from one of our students, and Ellie Lewis recommended her. And guess what? She's not from English. There's something going on with psychology producing poets, right? We've got Asia with the psychology minor, and we have Anisha Armstrong, whose poem is aptly entitled, "This is for You."
Hello, my poem is titled, "This is for You." This is for the ancestor that bled fighting for our rights. This is for the grandmother who passed down her memories to keep our story alive. This is for the mother who told us stories to give us a peaceful sleep at night. This is for the sister who never backed down from a fight. This is for you have survived. It's hard to make it out alive in these times, but you're here alive. You not only survived, but you thrived. This is for you, the heir of all your ancestors could ever dream, for they passed it on to you because they knew you'd make it a reality. This is for you, the blueprint of a masterpiece, for you are living proof that we still rise despite adversity. This is for you, the blessing, for you came to give us a better understanding of what it means to live a life that's outstanding. This is for you, the greatest gift of all, for you have withstood and brought us this far, and we thank you. For your dreams are important, a revolutionary spark that will light up the world and empower who we are. For we are our ancestors who fought for our rights. We are our grandmothers who passed on their stories to keep our memory alive. We are our mothers who told stories at night, and we are the sister who will never back down from a fight. Thank you.
Thank you, CLAS, for being here. We hope to see you next month when we're looking at how the liberal arts and sciences can revitalize our democracy. Stay in the room, chat with one another. Please take CLAS stickers if you did not get them, and some of those fun little wiki sticks for your next class. Have a great day.